Good Monday morning to each and every single one of you. Yes, that's right. I'm not Watson Prenier. I'm not the host of Battle for Freedom, but I am Andrew Coppens, host of Critical Thinking, your host with the most numbers on Mojo 50 Radio, and my show is heard every Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time. So I'm filling in for Watson if you haven't figured it out by now. I will be with you today and tomorrow, and I believe Patrick Oney, or the Pat Oney Show, he's going to be hosting on Wednesday. So thank you very much to Watson for allowing me this platform. To my listeners, thank you for waking up with me today. And to Watson's listeners, I hope you're going to find this show entertaining and fulfilling. Hopefully, also, maybe you learn a little bit of something, because if you know anything about my show, Critical Thinking, it is all about activating the brain and really thinking through things, not just doing what everybody says you should do. But if you are new to this show, please follow me on social media at The Coppens Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Parlay. And if you're new, you can spell my last name Coppens, Coppens. Now, if you're listening to this show, I encourage you to go over to the Mojo 50 Radio Facebook page, but I also encourage you to go over to my personal YouTube page. That's youtube.com/Andrew Coppens. youtube.com/Andrew Coppens. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notifications bell so you don't miss any of my content. Not only does my weekly show get put up there, but also I do this thing called Food for Thought. At least once a week, I like to be able to give you guys new content and ask questions, hopefully spark a conversation, give you some of my thoughts, but let you guys be the judge of what's going on. So, considering it's Monday morning, I'm guessing everybody's got a case of the Mondays like this guy. How about you get your cup of American Pride Roasters coffee, and why don't we start this week off Libertarian, shall we? I know it's not going to be an hour of Trump bootlicking MAGA talk, but it will be honest, and it's going to be about facts, faith, freedom, and free markets, which are the guiding principles of my weekend show. So what could possibly be in store for this first day of the work week? Well, we're going to talk some faith. The National Catholic Reporter tells us why Catholics should be supporting Mayor Pete. We're going to talk some freedom, because there's some actual really sad news out of Afghanistan, and I seem to remember that Trump wanted us out of that hellhole, yet we are still there. We're going to talk some facts and free markets, because what if I told you a major Western democracy was seriously considering banning cash, moolah, the dollar bill, in an effort to control you even more? So much fun to start your day off, right? Well, actually, you know what would have been fun? A little chocolate-covered strawberry-flavored coffee from our friends at American Pride Roasters and the Bells of Liberty, right here on Mojo 50 Radio. That can be heard every Saturday. I think it's 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. But guess what, folks? If you wanted to find a way to get that chocolate-covered strawberry Bells of Liberty American Pride Roasters coffee, guess what? You're a little bit too late, because it is sold out. 100 bags sold between February 1st and February 7th. Poof! Just like that, the recipe is now destroyed, and that means one thing and one thing only. A massive, hearty thank you is in store for each and every single one of you that made this happen. Now, it was really simple. Just go to mojo50.com, hit the donate button, put that donation of $14, and guess what? You got to support this network and get something for yourself, namely the best coffee known to mankind. So we here at Mojo 50 Radio cannot thank you enough for your quick response to this entire special. Now, while you may be too late to get in on this special, you still have plenty of time to donate to the Mojo 50 Radio cause. Head over to the mojo50.com, hit the donate button, or simply type in mojo50.com/donate, and you can help us keep liberty-minded content rolling for you each and every day of the week. That's right. There are no breaks on original content here on Mojo 50 Radio. I know the topics that I talked about earlier, not the most fun way to wake up, so I'm going to start off with something actually fun. Don't you worry, though. I'm not going to be talking about the Oscars because I refuse to give in to the outrage culture of the left or the right. One of the themes of my show is changing the culture. That's right. I want to, in 2020, highlight ways that we can change our culture, and one of those ways is to stop giving into the outrage culture of the left and the right. These people during the Oscars, bat nuts crazy. I know, if you didn't think that already, well, either you're probably too young to know any better, or you have not been paying attention for the last 3 decades or so. So for me, it's so what Brad Pitt, Joaquin Phoenix, and others went full on bat nuts crazy idiot. But is that really affecting anything that you're doing today on Monday? I would say no. But if so, I would also say maybe, just maybe, you want to reevaluate how you're living your life. Just saying. So for me, move on. Don't pay them any mind, and better yet, how about you don't pay them any money by not going to their movies? But on a true, actual happy note, I know Watson is not a fan of the NFL, but I'm kind of a sports nut. In fact, I've spent the last 9 years of my life in the sports industry. So this weekend, there was this reboot of the XFL. And for me, anytime football is on my TV, I am a happy man. More importantly, I'm a lucky man because my wife let me watch all 4 games this weekend of the XFL. So I thought, let's have a little bit of fun up front and talk about football not ending. Did you guys watch? Well, it's a little too early to know what the ratings were, but judging by Twitter, judging by the reaction on Facebook, I think a lot of people were tuning in. A lot of people were curious. And so what to make of this league, right? That's the big question coming out of week 1, because week 1 of the AAF, the Association of American Football, last year, that was a big win in the ratings. But the league didn't even last a full season. And the XFL itself, back in 2001, it lasted all of 1 season. So clearly, the first week of ratings doesn't really matter. But here's my take on this. This league is different. This is not a gimmick league. This is not the XFL of old. Most importantly, this is not a league that is just trying to be the NFL light, if you will. So we've seen all of this stuff before from other leagues, but we haven't seen what the XFL put in place. First of all, the running clock, right? The pace of play. You can get a game in about 2.5 hours. In the NFL, you're lucky if it's 3.5 hours. And have you seen the American populace writ large? Just saying. Anyway, not only is the pace of play different, the talent level. I saw great talent. You had a Matt McGloin. You had a lot of really good skill players in this game that were trying to either reinvigorate a career or play for the love of the game. And I think that shined through, or whatever you want to call it, in week 1. I really think that this league is different than any other league that we've seen to date in that respect. The talent pool is much greater than the AAF. The talent pool is much greater than the original XFL. And then number 3, the overall rules of this league, way more fun. Talk about actually making a kickoff fun. You have 2 teams that line up on either side of the 35-yard line, and they cannot move. The offensive side of the 35-yard line, they can't move until the ball is actually caught by the return man. And oh, by the way, if you kick it into the end zone or you kick it out of bounds, it goes to the plus side of the 45. All of this is an incentive to make the league more fun. Kickoffs actually mean something. It is much more difficult when you don't have a running 45, 35, 55-yard start on the guy returning the ball. Now, I also, like I said, with the pace of play, love the running clock. I think the running clock makes a lot of sense. One, it forces people to really innovate, right? Because you've got not only a 25-second play clock, but you've also got this fact that the clock continuously runs, with the exception of first downs, with the exception of somebody going out of bounds, and then within the 2-minute area, you've got some different rules. I think it's going to take some time for people to get used to what they're seeing, but overall, I like it. I like the fact that I can sit down for a couple hours, watch a game, and it's actually entertaining. It's not bad football. But I want to say this. If you watched the first week, it was obvious that the offensive lines were way, way behind the 8 ball. Give it some time. I think what you're going to see here is a league that is going to need to take some time. We didn't see a lot of the double passes behind the line of scrimmage that you could have seen. We didn't see a bunch of stuff that is built into the game. We didn't see a lot of 3-point tries. We didn't see a lot of 2-point tries. We just saw a lot of typical NFL stuff. And I think that comes from a lot of these coaches coming from the NFL ranks, and that's all that they know. I think over time, if you get a Bob Stoops, if you get some of these guys to understand how to manipulate the game and maybe put some pressure on the opponents, I think it's going to be very intriguing to watch what happens. Now, will this league survive? Nobody knows that answer after just one weekend, but I can tell you it was much, much better on the field opening weekend than the AAF last year. And really almost every other spring league I've ever seen since the World Football League way back in the 1990s. So the key for me is going to be finding a way to have these viral moments, right? I think that's really going to be key. And, show big plays, show kickoff returns, show all this really cool stuff that's happening in the league, right? I think it's got a big time chance because it gives the fan, access, and it does all the things that we've been talking about. And if you're sick of the NFL's political junk and all the stuff that's going on, the first week of the XFL was devoid of all of that. So if you're a true die-hard football fan and not a fan of the NFL because of all the stuff happening off the field, well, tune in next weekend to ESPN or ABC or Fox Sports 1 or Fox. That's right. That's the other big difference. Unlike the AAF, you don't just have the NFL Network and CBS Sports Network. You have got the biggest names in the sports live entertainment arena in ESPN and Fox Sports behind you. That kind of exposure can only do good things in the doldrums of February and March because nobody's really paying attention to the NBA. Nobody's paying attention to the NHL. Maybe college basketball's coming more onto your radar after the NFL is done if you're a sports fan. But I think you're going to find the XFL a very fun, very innovative, and something that can be a long-term investment as a sports fan. All right, I know not all of you are sports junkies, but save me a little bit. It's Monday morning. But let's get into a little bit of politics here, because do you remember when then candidate Donald Trump said that we had gotten into too many foreign wars and that it was time to bring our troops back home? Just asking for friends and some family who may have been over there, and some of them have actually paid the ultimate sacrifice in this place called Afghanistan and this other place called Iraq over the last 20 years or so. Now, if there was ever a reason for me personally to vote for Trump in 2016, it would have been his rhetoric about ending bad wars and not putting troops in harm's way needlessly. That would have been the only reason I could have thought to have possibly voted for Trump. but I still didn't vote for Trump in 2016. Even so, let's go ahead and just fast forward all the way to this weekend, and let's remember that Trump told us he wanted to end bad wars and not put troops in harm's way. Because according to the Washington Examiner, there were 2 more soldiers killed in Afghanistan this weekend. The report says the following, quote, "A firefight killed 2 American service members and injured 6 others after a conflict in Naganar province on Saturday, according to reports. The incident is believed to have been a green-on-blue attack that left 1 fatality and 3 injuries for Afghan forces as well. A green-on-blue attack occurs when American troops are harmed by friendly forces or extremists posing as forces that are in partnerships with the United States. Officials believe, quote, an individual in an Afghan uniform opened fire on the combined U.S. and Afghan force with a machine gun," unquote. It is not yet clear if the conflict was triggered by a Taliban infiltrator or if it was due to a dispute between U.S. and Afghan forces attempting to work together. An investigation into the incident is underway, and the names of the deceased service members have not been released. Initial reports indicate that as many as 5 or 6 Americans had been killed. Now, Trump did say that conditions on the ground also, by the way, would dictate policy way back in 2017. So, what the hell is Trump waiting for? That bit of news from this weekend should be all you need to know. Conditions on the ground are exactly the same as they were in 2001 when we went to war in Afghanistan. Namely, we cannot trust any of the Afghan people to be friendly to us. They are killing us thanks to our kindness. The Taliban is still the Taliban. Our number 1 objective was to kill bin Laden, right? At least that was what was told to us, the American people. And then number 2 was to get rid of the Taliban. Yet, checking, it's almost 20 years later, and the Taliban still exists. What in the blue hell are we doing at this point in time? What are we doing there? That is my big question. What are we doing in Afghanistan still today? We, the American military, the American people, our might, our tax dollars, all of this equals the most lethal, the most advanced, the most powerful military in the entire world. And in 20 years' time, we still can't figure out who our friends and who our enemies are in Afghanistan? I love my family and friends that went over there and fought. I love them deeply. So much so that I'm willing to demand that we do better by them. I demand that we actually start, using the military might that we have and either win this shit war or go the hell home. Oh, and by the way, how have we not killed every single member of the Taliban to date after 20 damn years? I'm just asking for the, thousands that have been killed over there and the hundreds that have been killed by friendly fire. The green on blue. The fact that we have to know that there's a green on blue attack should be all the information that you need to know that we are doing Afghanistan all sorts of wrong. Now, Trump wants to talk a big game about ending endless wars and bringing our troops home safe. Yet, it's 3 years into your term. You've done what? How about ending the Afghanistan war and deciding to bomb their asses back to the Stone Age? You want to get rid of the Taliban? A really good way would be to, wipe that country off of this earth. Also, how about not supporting the people who don't want us there and aren't our friends to begin with? Simple question. Are we better off being there today or having our friends and family home? Are we still capable of bombing the Taliban into oblivion with this many troops on the ground in Afghanistan? The easy answer is yes. It just takes the stones of the president to tell the military leadership to stop whatever they're currently doing, because none of it is working, and get the hell out of the way, because here's a new course. We let the world know we're not going to take these people killing our soldiers and infiltrating our fighting forces like they have been for literally 20 damn years anymore. You know how you say that? Moab. Now, Trump has talked this big game, right? Yet, by the way, not just Afghanistan, we're still in every single war zone we were before he took office. And by the way, we've also dumped more troops into Saudi Arabia. Just saying. Go ahead and look that little nugget up there, my MAGA friends. Riddle me, how is any of that making us more safe at home? And most importantly, getting our troops home as Trump promised us. How is any of that actually working towards those goals? Now, I get a little bit of the Saudi Arabia piece, a little bit, because strategically, if you look at the map, Saudi Arabia is kind of right in the middle of all the cluster you-know-what that's happening over there. And if you can arm Saudi Arabia, who's maybe not exactly friendly with Israel, but also happens to be on the same side as Israel when it comes to looking towards the rest of the Muslim world, maybe it makes some sense. Maybe being the key word, but I don't get how sending troops over there helps. I also don't get how sending them our military assets, like planes and stuff, really helps. Especially since last time I checked, the hijackers of 9/11 were Saudi. The people of Saudi Arabia, by and large, happen to, oh, that's right, also be radicalized by the very kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In that kingdom, that the people that are in power over there happen to, oh, that's right, those people happen to all whip up Wahhabism. Yet we're sending them multi-billions of dollars of weapons of war in the hopes that they don't turn them on Israel and they turn them towards Iran and Yemen. Now, if you listen to my show on Saturday, I also happened to talk about Ukraine and proxy wars and all those things. What do you think us sending military support to Saudi Arabia is all about? I'm pretty darn sure it's all about taking our intelligence community's side in wars in Yemen, in wars all over the Middle East, and most importantly, propping up a regime that is anti-Iranian. So I get doing that, but have we not learned any lessons at all from anything that we have ever done in this entire history of the last 30, 40, 50 years? Have we not learned a damn thing? Propping up the enemy of my enemy is not a good look. It usually ends real bad. Ask, I don't know, our troops in Afghanistan right now. Because the last time I checked, we were the ones that, oh, that's right, funded the Taliban. But on that note, and that super happy note, it's time to hit a break right here on Mojo 50 Radio. On the flip side, we may have a case for Catholic support of Mayor Pete. And, oh, what is that now? Oh, that's right. We also happen to make the Rock the Cash buff. Find out more on the flip side. Welcome back into Battle for Freedom. I'm Andrew Coppens, your guest host for today and tomorrow. You can follow me at The Coppens Show on Twitter, on Facebook, on Parlay, on Instagram, basically anywhere your social media heart desires. I hope you enjoyed that first, little salvo into waking your brain up this week. Well, we've got plenty more to talk about. In fact, in this second half of the show, we're going to talk about a case for Catholic support, the Mayor Pete edition, and then, we're also going to talk about, rocking the Kashba. You'll see why that reference actually makes sense in a little while. But let's start with this whole Mayor Pete and this whole idea of a case for Catholic support. Because one of my tenets on my show is faith. And one of the tenets here on Battle for Freedom is clearly faith if you're a follower of Watson's show and what he does each and every day. But I want to be careful here to say that, I'm Catholic. And so when somebody wants to make a case for a particular candidate from a Catholic perspective, it's interesting to me. I hope you find it interesting as well. Because as we get to the first actual primary that's happening tomorrow, by the way, one day away, many of my fellow Catholics and many people of faith are focusing on 5 realistic candidates on the Democratic side. Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. Personally, I really only think that Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders are going to be the only viable candidates in the end. But, like I said, since I'm a practicing Catholic and also a Libertarian person, that means I'm curious. I also think it's important to understand the arguments that my fellow Catholics are making for Democratic candidates. I realistically think it's important to hear their words and then ask yourself, is this true or not? Right? So, naturally, the National Catholic Register did just that. Put up the very argument for Mayor Pete. Over the weekend, they published a look at Mayor Pete and why a Catholic should support him, with a case being made by Mayor Pete's head of Catholic outreach, Robert C. Bordone, who is also a senior fellow at Harvard Law School. So you can imagine where this is going to go. Okay. Well, Bordone told us the following, quote, "Some might focus on Buttigieg's support of abortion rights or his marriage to a man as fundamentally disqualifying him. I do not think it's possible to conclude that the bishop's guidance or Catholic faith tradition is disqualifying someone from the presidency while assessing as worthy other candidates who may be divorced or who may hold views contrary to the church. Short of a perfect match between Catholic principles and a candidate's platform, it might be tempting to adopt a mechanistic approach to selecting a candidate. But a robotic, issue-by-issue assessment is not what the bishop's document or our faith asks of us. Even accepting the exhortation to accord extra emphasis on life issues, I am hard-pressed to find a just way to assess the dignity of the individual person being treated inhumanely at the border as differentially valuable than the dignity of life in the womb or the dignity of the elderly at the end of their life." So are you catching this? What he's saying is, if you believe that Donald Trump should be the person that gets elected, how can you vote for him because he's been divorced? Yet you would say that it's disqualifying because he, meaning Mayor Pete, happens to be married to another man, or that he happens to believe in abortion, right? How could you possibly do that? And then on top of it, right, we're just supposed to ignore Mayor Pete's homosexuality. Ignore that he's not just for abortion, but also not being able to say infanticide is wrong. And that should be banned. We're just supposed to ignore all of that. We're supposed to ignore all of that as Catholics. Okay? And then on top of it, we're supposed to believe that the pro-life movement is only about the baby. Now, I want to be clear here because I really believe that Bourdon has a very fundamental, two of them, not one, but two fundamental misunderstandings of the Catholic faith tradition, especially when it comes to life. Let's lay it out real clear here. Life matters, period. The fight for the unborn is important because it's the first step in protecting life. Okay? It's the first step. It's not the only step. Now, I want you to think about this. Even if you're not Catholic, okay, ask yourself, what do Catholic charities exist to do on this earth? Okay, now that you've had a little bit of time to think about it, the answer is protect the sanctity of life. How do I know this? Catholic charities exist for adoption, orphanages around the world, hospitals around the world, charity in general. Almost every level of Catholic charity exists to protect life. Homeless people, people who might be mentally disabled. It is all about protecting the sanctity of their lives. Nothing, by the way, bothers me more than the pro-abort's assumption that the Catholic life movement is all about abortion. It is something that you see time and again, right? This whole, are you going to take care of that unwanted baby? Are you going to take care of that mentally disabled baby? It's just a gross argument because it fundamentally misunderstands that my money, my time, my support of my Catholic Church, whether that's my parish or the money goes up the ladder, it all goes towards things that happen to protect life. Okay? I also want to make very clear, those that cannot have babies really would love to adopt a baby more often than not. Guess who helps facilitate that more than any other group in the world? The Catholic Church. Catholic charities exist to help on all levels of life, from birth until death. Catholic nursing homes, Catholic hospice, Catholic orphanages, adoption services, the priest being there for you while pregnant. So if I'm there and doing the whole March for Life thing or doing all the, protesting of abortions, I'm also likely supporting my church and the money that I give to my church every week, or the things that I do beyond this protestation of abortion. Pretty sure that shows that I'm caring too. It's just a really gross accusation all the way around that somehow if I'm not out there at the same time as I'm protesting abortion, also screaming, more orphanages, I want those kids, as if that is the end all be all. What it really matters or comes down to is that those people and the people that are like them are really saying that they want population control. Okay. Their air of moral superiority can go straight to hell. You've lost the argument when you're willing to allow the murder of another human being or fail to even recognize that individual is an actual human being from the moment they're born. Now, Bourdon, because Mayor Pete is a perfect Catholic voting bloc, right? Bourdon would go on to tell us that Buttigieg is living the ideals of his Catholic school upbringing. And then he was all about inclusivity, kindness, compassion, and integrity. He even went as far to say this: as I interrogate the positions and the integrity, character, and campaign rhetoric of the candidates, the choice for Buttigieg becomes clear. Even as he disagreed with pro-life Democrat Kristen Day on last week's, so now 2 weeks, or roughly 2 weeks ago's Fox News town hall, he did so with respect and integrity, stressing differences arrived at in good faith and offering a basis for shared understanding. That certainly would be an interesting take on what took place. Too bad it flies in the face of reality. I say, let's go to the video and you tell me if that is what you got out of that. More importantly, Day would be a good reference, Kristen Day would be a good reference as if, as to if that was what she got out of it. Well, she actually had a lot to say, and her take on this entire issue, far different. Telling us in a USA Today op-ed following that interaction the following, quote, "He refused twice to even answer that part of my question and instead focused on his unyielding support for abortion and did not really seem to want the vote from me or people who share my views." Now, Day also noted just how extreme the Dems have become on this entire abortion issue, which is likely why Mayor Pete wanted to dance around this topic like he was at his favorite gay nightclub. And you may believe that the Democrats are super extreme on this issue, right? Because we've seen them time and again. Governor Northam, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, all of these individuals seem to be very, very radical on this issue. Well, there might be two reasons why. First, $3 billion. According to Day's research, that is how much money the pro-abortion lobby has handed out to candidates on the Democratic side. Now, number two, Warren Buffett shelled out a whopping $1.5 billion from 2001 to 2014 by himself. So, given the money and given where all of these political candidates are on the Democratic side when it comes to the issue of life or abortion, one would assume that that is where the majority of the Democratic Party is, right? After all, they took all of the rhetoric of safe, legal, and rare out of their platform in 2016. But here are a few facts from Day's article alone. 59% of Democrats support at least some restrictions on abortion, according to a Gallup poll. 29% of them actively call themselves pro-life. 20% of pro-life Democrats would only vote for a pro-life candidate. We're not talking 5%. We're not talking, around the edges. We're talking about a pretty active, vocal base of people. Now, would you say that pandering to the black vote, pandering to the Hispanic vote would be a bad thing for the Democratic Party? They've been doing it for decades, yet 14% of our population is African American. The Hispanic population may be growing, but it's still not in line with the white population in America. What about the Asian population, right? They are courting those constituents like it's going out of style. Out of style, my friends. And yet, this constituency, this group of people cannot be courted at all. In fact, they're being shunned by and large by the higher up powers that be apparatus within the Democratic Party. There also seems to be a very fundamental misunderstanding, or at least twisting, of this idea of social justice and the causes of social justice in the Catholic Church today. Now, I know you're going to be shocked by this, but it's largely led by very Marxist-rooted theology within the Jesuit tradition, and certainly within the thoughts of Pope Francis today. He's kind of a Jesuit, by the way, the first pope to be of the Jesuit tradition within, the Catholic Church. So here's the deal, okay? If you aren't Catholic, you might not know that social justice is a thing and has been a thing for my entire 38 years on this earth. It is an important movement within the church. But here's the fundamental misunderstanding. It's that justice, namely caring for all people, aka valuing life from conception to death, is actually supposed to come from the individual. Governments are not the answer within social justice, at least as far as I've ever been taught within the Catholic faith tradition. They're not the answer. The Catholic Church that I grew up in was centered on doing good works by yourself for other people. Not that you would just let the government do that. Not that the government would replace your duty to your fellow man as a person within the Catholic faith. And that difference is super key. We should be called by our faith in the Catholic Church, in Christianity, to serve other people. But doing so at the behest of government force is not what Jesus taught us to do. That is not service to others. That's just shirking your duty as a Christian, to say the least. Not God, but Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar, render unto God what is God's, right? That is really fundamentally misunderstood within social justice. What he's saying is, give what is due to Caesar. Give what is due to government. But advocating for more government on top of what is already owed, that's not what Jesus was teaching. And most importantly, that is not service to others. That is just pushing it to the side and not having any compassion. It is not compassionate to just say my tax dollar goes to XYZ. Real compassion comes from actually doing something, whether that is giving your money, giving your time, or giving your skills to other people. That is what service is all about. Of all the Democratic candidates, Pete Buttigieg reminds me of the left's version of Mitt Romney. And if you paid any attention to my show this weekend, Romney is one of the most detestable figures in American politics today. Probably not for the reasons that you're thinking if you didn't listen to that show, by the way. If you didn't, I would suggest, maybe heading over to the iTunes, hitting up Critical Thinking with Andrew Coppens, hitting that subscribe button, leaving a 5-star rating. Just check out that show, because I laid it out in full as to who Mitt Romney was, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I think that's what Pete Buttigieg is when it comes to integrity and his faith. He uses his Episcopalian faith and his Catholic Church upbringing, he just went to a Catholic school in South Bend, as a cudgel against people who don't hold his same political beliefs. All you need to know about whether or not Pete Buttigieg believes in social justice as a personal responsibility or not is take a look at how he lives his life. Last time I checked, he's not known as the most charitable individual out there, and most importantly, he gives none of his time, unless a camera's in front of him or unless it benefits him politically. Doing good by other human beings, doing good works within the Catholic faith tradition that Pete Buttigieg would like us all to believe that we should be voting for him for, is done because it's good. It's not done because it makes you look good or that it makes the other person look good. the recipient look good. It's done because it's good, it's just, and it's right. Good, just, and right are not political. Good, just, and right are biblical. Just saying, there, Mayor Pete, and this is why a Catholic should vote for me. For me, it's not just your stance on abortion. It's not just your stance on gay marriage because you're a gay man. It's not just your stance on some of these, issues. It's your fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be Catholic and what it means to be charitable. A charitable person doesn't just listen and then regurgitate their own viewpoints to another person. A person that actually is living that faith tradition would empathize. There was no empathy in that entire exchange. None. And that just goes to show you that this is all about politics for Mayor Pete. Now, speaking of power and control and all of the wonderful goodness that comes with, democratic politics today, maybe some of you are too old, maybe some of you are too young, but for those of us in the early edges of the millennial generation, if I say the word cream, what's your response? Likely dollar bill, y'all. Yes, that's cash rules everything around me, unless apparently you're in Australia. But before we get to all of that talk, do not forget, follow me on the socials at The Coppens Show. If you're new to me and you're a Battle for Freedom person, it's COPPENS, COPPENS for that last name. Back to this cash rules everything around me mantra, right? Cash is king in some respects, but today it's all about technology and, the digital age, right? Well, if you're in Australia, cash might not be ruling anything anywhere because apparently, according to Reason.com, okay, Australia is just a Senate vote away from banning the use of cash for anything over than $10,000 in Australian money, which comes out to, I believe, just over $6,100 US. So if you spend $6,100, you put that cash in the bank for that car that you sold or whatever. You can't do that. You cannot use cash for anything over that. Because, nothing says freedom like, sorry, your cash is no good here. Now, naturally, the government is telling the people of Australia it's all just for their own good. You see those nefarious money launderers, those nefarious drug lords, and all those evil people that are using cash to do bad things. We've got to stop that. Back in 2017, the argument for the Aussie government officials doing this went something like this, quote, "For our purposes, an economy less reliant on cash could help counter the black economy. Electronic payments leave a footprint that cash transactions do not. That is why the latter are so attractive to criminals and those operating in the black economy. Not only is cash anonymous, but it can be used without leaving an obvious audit trail. In contrast, the more we move people into the digital payment world, the more visible, traceable, and reportable their transactions can be. Digital payment can also be linked to identity, both of individuals and businesses, which cash cannot." Now, you might say at that amount of money, 6,100 American dollars, 10,000 Aussie dollars, it could be about controlling the black market. I mean, not a lot of people have that kind of cash just lying around. Well, there's just one problem. It turns out that 2/3 of cash is actually being held in reserve by people in Australia. 2/3 of all cash, 2/3 is being held in reserve. There's a further 1/4 that goes through buying and selling goods. So if you're doing the math, 2/3 and 1/4, well, that means less than 1/3 could possibly be being used for nefarious reasons. And now I would say if 2/3 of cash is actually being held in reserve by people, you could make it a good argument that the storage of wealth isn't exactly good, especially cash-wise, because basic economics would tell you that the more cash that's actually moving through the economy quickly and around it is actually better for the economy. And that's why when we're talking about a lot of other stuff economically, when you hear quantitative easing, it's all about putting cash in so that it moves. The faster it moves, the easier it is. But anyway, yeah. So, but there's a problem because that's not what this whole thing was about. It's not about the wealth accumulation, at least according to the very people that put this forth. Moving cash to digital would happen to do what? Oh, that's right. More surveillance. And they admitted to it. More government in your lives. They're not even hiding it. Think of this from Kenneth S. Rogoff, former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the author of The Curse for Cash. Quote, the government's right to tax, regulate, and enforce laws trumps individual privacy considerations. The government's right to tax, regulate, and enforce laws trumps the individual privacy. Wait, the government's right to tax and regulate? No, that's not how free market economies are supposed to work. The right. The government doesn't have the right to tax or the right to regulate. They have the privilege of doing that at the behest of the individuals. But that's how bureaucrats think. And at least Rogoff is honest here. But cash is freedom, the ultimate form of freedom. Yes, there are some bad actors that will take cash and abuse it. But there are bad actors in the digital platform. It's literally how I have a job. There are bad actors in digital platforms of all kinds. Just remember this. Tyrants come for your guns and your money. You are screwed. Australia, they've already had gun control laws to the point of buybacks, and now they're coming for your money. Wake the ever-loving hell up. Wake up, Australia, because if this happens there, you know it's happening in the EU, and it's going to come to America soon. On that super fantastic expialidocious moment, I'll see you tomorrow right here on Battle for Freedom. I'm Andrew Coppens. Follow me on the social media of your choice at The Coppens Show. And coming up next, you know the drill. It's Your Morning Mojo with Brad Staggs and that guy they call Handy J. Until then, Matthew 5:44.